Hello everyone, it's Turin here, and today guys I'm here with another entry on our Community Cast series. In this game we're going to be having a matchup between the Empire, piloted by the Gabo King, and he's going to be facing off against the Warriors of Chaos, who are going to be piloted by Link. So definitely going to be a good time, and guys, I hope you guys all noticed that we do indeed have a Balthazar GELT in this game, so definitely very excited for that. So without further ado, let's get right into the army compositions and have a bit of fun. So in the front line, it looks like he does have some spearmen over here, and these actually are the shielded variant. So these guys do have 42 melee defense compared to the 35 of their counterparts. So I guess if you're a little bit sparse on money, these wouldn't be a bad choice. Chaos does sometimes field monstrous units in the front line, like sometimes you'll have Shaggoths running about or things like that. So having spears in the front isn't, actually that bad of an idea. And still, they make a slightly more secure fodder unit than their traditional spear brethren over here. Aside from that, he has a pretty common Empire infantry front line with halberds and the Tattersouls and the Sigmar Sons. Sigmar Sons and Tattersouls, regardless of the matchup, are, in my opinion, a very cost-effective kind of duo of regiments of renown. So you're going to see them in most Empire front lines, at least from my anecdotal experience. Aside from that, he does have some halberds over in the flank, which gives him a little bit of armor piercing against the Warriors of Chaos, and an additional group of spearmen with shields. But guys, the moment you've all been waiting for is the mighty Balthazar GELT. Look at him just triumphantly marching across the battlefield. Looks like he's starting to run now, but he does have the Transmutation of Lead, which is kind of like, I wouldn't call it like a Fate of Buna, because Fate of Buna just does like pure damage, but it kind of has a similar metric. But I suppose from my experience, it's done better damage to like single targets. So, oh no, this is Transmutational Lead. I was actually talking about Final Transmutation. So this essentially just gives negative 22% weapon damage and negative 34 melee attack, I believe. And then the Glittering Globe right here gives 30 armor and 8 melee or 8 leadership, at the cost of 7 wins of magic. Last but not least, he does have the Plague of Rust. So a lot of these like frontline troops, like these spears and the Sigmar Sons and the Tattersouls, are going to be a lot more effective if the GELT is able to kind of lower the armor of the Forsaken and some of those other Chaos frontline troops that are kind of on the border of being sturdy. Like Forsaken, as you can see in the tooltip, are considered an armored unit. So having that kind of armor mitigation on something that's around 70 or 80 armor can be pretty impactful for these low armor piercing units. Aside from that, he does have some handgunners in the back. He does have the Hammer of the Witches that's just going to town on some of these chariots over here. He does have some Demogryph Knights with halberds, and I believe he did have the Silver Bullets somewhere. He does have them over here. So again, he has a lot of the staples of a traditional Empire build, but guys, he does have the GELT. Definitely a bold move, Cotton, and let's see how it works out for him. So for the Chaos player over here, Link, he actually did bring some Chaos chariots, and these are the anti-infantry variant. They're not the heavy-duty armor-piercing Gorby's chariots. I actually don't like this pick really against the Empire, but it is always fun to see them in action regardless from a spectator point of view. But still, the Empire has so many tools against chariots. They have mostly spears in their front line and flanks. On top of that, they have very strong cav. They have good artillery pieces that can really gun these things down. Like once the Hammer of the Witches makes square contact with these bad boys, they're just going to go down so quick. Aside from that, he does have some Forsaken over here, some Chaos Warriors in the front line, and it looks like another group of Forsaken out on the far side. I really like what he was doing here, just having Chaos Warriors as kind of the anchor of your army, because, at the end of the day, for the amount you're paying for Chaos Warriors, they have pretty good stats. 44 melee defense is not bad, and 34 melee attack and 36 weapon strength is quite good against low armored infantry. So I really like Chaos Warriors against Empire, and then mixing in Forsaken to kind of pressure the flanks. And again, if they are protecting their flank with spears, you can overwhelm them incredibly quickly. So I definitely like the Forsaken pick here. Aside from that, he does have a Dragon Ogre Shaggoth, some Chaos Marauders in the back line, and like I was mentioning to you guys earlier, Empire players don't really bring greatswords anymore, so you can get away with bringing Chaos Warriors. They usually are a pretty good pick. On top of that, he does have the mighty Prince Sigvald with his Auric armor, some more Forsaken over here, and yeah, looks like Chaos Knights with lances who are backed up by an exalted hero. So the lance variant, of course, having a massive charge bonus. It actually has 80 compared to the 76 of the Knights of the Blazing Sun, but again, they have very heavy armor and are very sturdy. So without further ado, let's get right into this game and have some fun, boys. So you can see the Hammer of the Witches making some excellent contact here. It hasn't actually killed a model yet, but one or two good shots here will definitely start taking out models here, which will be pretty devastating. So, but again, this is why you don't really bring chariots in this matchup, because a single group of Demogryph Knights or Knights of the Blazing Sun, or pretty much any like high mass cav unit, can just kind of run these guys off the battlefield and just kind of punish them. So you can see they're getting Last Samurai a little bit here. They're just getting gunned down by the Silver Bullets, and the Demogryph Knights are coming in pretty hot. You can see cannon fire coming in their way, and it's just not a good day for these chariots. You can see one just going down right here. So a very ambitious move from the Chaos player. But I think this is good for the Empire player because he did bring Balthazar GELT, so any early advantage you can get to kind of mitigate that is, mitigate you having brought GELT is, pretty good. But regardless, the story behind this cast is the Gabo King, definitely a very good player, was commenting on some of the chats and said, hey, I had some good GELT games, and, I was knocking him as always, and he mentioned he had some pretty good games where GELT actually did some stuff, so here we are. So the Chaos player is advancing right now. You can see in the front line, the Chaos Warriors are kind of just pushing forward, and this Dragon Ogre Shaggoth is definitely going to be very helpful here, kind of helping to deal with the Demogryph Knights. Granted, they do have, you know, an anti-large bonus, but still, you know, he doesn't have a lot of, you know, ways of dealing with those Demogryph Knights and those very heavily armored calves. So I suppose, like, the Chaos Warriors, yeah, they don't really have armor piercing. He doesn't have any halberds, so this Shaggoth is going to have a lot of weight on his shoulders, especially considering, like, the resources you normally spend to deal with enemy cav were spent on these Chaos Chariots, which just got sent back to the Shadow Realm over here. So they're scurrying off into the distance, but hopefully this one will be able to come back and make a little bit of a, you know, a reunion with its boys. So over here, the Silver Bullets are in position to fire. The second group of handgunners looks like it's advancing right here, but these Chaos Warriors do, if I'm not mistaken, have silver shields, so they should be pretty resilient to this missile fire, which is what makes them pretty nice. You can see it's coming in pretty hot here, but they're not going to take a ton of damage. Granted, the Silver Bullets do hit like trucks regardless. So Chaos Warriors advancing in. You can see the Marauders in the back. I suppose that is his armor-piercing core right here, these two units. So, all right, so they're advancing into the Silver Bullet Fire. Prince Sigvald definitely at his home in the core of combat here. You can see some of these Chaos Knights over here have been targeted by the Hammer of the Witches, which is really, really tough. They've already taken a ton of damage, and had they not taken this cannon fire, they would have traded somewhat evenly with the Empire Cav. But that being said, they're really, really behind now. I mean, they're down to 31 models. They've taken about, you know, 50% of their HP and damage, and the Hammer of the Witches is just such a devastating, you know, unit in general. It just hits like a truck. So you can see some of these spears have engaged against this exalted hero. Definitely not where he wants to be. He probably wants to be like up pressuring the flank, or taking advantage of his speed and like pushing up and around, or even intercepting these Knights of the Blazing Sun who have very, very low AP. That would have been a nice play. But still, it's kind of trapped in here with the spears. But you guys can see we're going to get a pretty good little Forsaken charge in here. They're going to get a nice kind of sandwiching on these spears. This is exactly where you want Forsaken, just either pressuring the flanks or tearing into lightly armored troops. Look at that karate kick that guy's throwing there. Definitely a bold dude. But they've already taken 8 model kills, and the Forsaken are just now getting in there with the charge. So that'll be a pretty good advantageous situation for the Chaos player. But over here in the front, you can see that the Plague of Rust has been dropped on these Chaos Warriors right here, and that's really going to make these Tattersouls do pretty well, because they only have 40 armor now. So really, I mean, their sturdiness, you know, to a large extent, has been thrown out the window. So the Flagellants are getting in there, doing pretty well. That Dragon Ogre Shaggoth is backing up those Chaos Warriors, but he is still starting to take some cannon fire. So I definitely like that use of GELT's Plague of Rust, and it does last a really long time. He did overcast it, and you can see it's only halfway done. So that entire group is essentially going to be very, very squishy for the duration. And I also like the fact that he used it with the Tattersouls, who are a unit that's going to be guaranteed to do damage to you. You can see in the back line, the Shaggoth has had enough of this funny business and is pushing back to the cannon. The Demogryph Knights have surrounded Prince Sigvald here, which is pretty tough, but you can see the Demogryph Knights are going to react over here, and the Silver Bullets are going to be left to their own devices. So the Prince over here, he's definitely going to regenerate a little bit, hopefully, but, you know, definitely not a good time for him. Over here in the front, you can see a transmutation of lead going down on these guys, you know, helping the Sigmar's Sons to stand a little bit longer. It lowers their weapon damage, as well as, where is it? Man, that was a really short duration, but the GELT himself is looking like he's wanting to get up in combat, but I think he's more suited to just kind of stare these guys down and wave his sword around angrily with his crappy lore magic. But still, you know, some good play. The Gobbo King is definitely making some use of him. I really, again, like to play with the Tattersouls, who've racked up 56 kills against Chaos Warriors, which they most certainly would not have without that debuff there. So in the back line, you can see the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth is kind of fighting against some of these Demogryph Knights, and those chariots have come in the back and are just like ramming them. But you know, the only thing that looks to be doing anything is that guy with his whip there is getting a little action in. But still, bringing the Shaggoth back here wasn't a bad play, because it is able to shut down the cannon temporarily, which is going to take a lot of pressure off those Chaos Knights over there on the far side, and, you know, help him in other areas. But still, the Shaggoth doing pretty well against the Demis, but still, they do have that anti-large bonus and are going to get through to it eventually. Over here, the Chaos Knights with Lances have kind of pushed through and got onto some of these handgunners on the flank, and also this Chariot. I'm not sure I think it's actually just retreating, so it looks like it was coming to help, but it's actually just piecing out right now. It's like, fuck this shit, I'm out of here. So those Chaos Knights got in there, got a pretty nice little charge against those handgunners. Were able to rout off, you know, a pretty substantial group of, you know, taking about, what, 45 models, give or take. So yeah, routing those guys off is pretty nice. The Chaos Knights with Lances are still steady. Again, they basically have like kind of a equivocal stats to Chosen. Not this variant. They do have lower combat stats with 38 melee attack and 34 melee defense, but the variant with the Sword and Shield actually are very, very tough. They just have good sustained combat stats, but you can see that Chaos Knight just gets absolutely wrecked, but still, they're going to get a pretty good charge here onto this cannon crew, it looks like, unless they do get intercepted by those spears. So that's something you have to be aware of. Like, even if your Knights get clipped, guys, like by a spear group, they will change their aggro, and just look at that cannon fire. Just take out like 4 of them with one shot. They've definitely been put in the trash can, and it's looking pretty grim for the Warriors of Chaos. The Mighty GELT is definitely, you know, he's a little bit tired of being shit-talked here, and he's getting in there, waving a sword, casting his magic, but he must be pretty low on his Winds of Magic, because those Lord Metal spells are pretty expensive for what they actually do. I think they could be a little bit of, maybe that could be like the niche of Lord Metal, if they actually like lowered the cost of it, you know, all the spells across the board. I think people might start like consider, you know, trying to bring it. So over here in the front, you can see the the Prince Sigvald is fighting off some of these spears, putting up a bit of a last stand, and man, his model is pretty giant. If any of you guys are big lore buffs, is Sigvald like actually like known to be like bigger than other mortals in the Warhammer lore, I'd actually be curious about that. But over here you can see that some of these Chaos Warriors are kind of finally starting to get beaten down by these the flagellant hordes here, and still putting up a pretty good fight. And you guys will see something I'm going to be talking about in my Chaos guide that I'm working on is that I really think that Chaos Warriors, in terms of the Chaos roster, are a pretty good unit. Both the Great Weapon variant, they have pretty high melee defense and pretty high melee attack for Great Weapon units. So yeah, again, just my 2 cents while I'm rambling here. But still, some of the Silver Bullets have reformed ranks, and they're getting some pretty good shots into the back of these guys. And these Chaos Warriors, for the most part, are surrounded and definitely looking very, very grim. But Sigvald's not in bad shape. The Gelt looks like he's casting something. I'm not sure. He's glowing with his metal magic over there. I'm just got to look around and see what he was actually targeting. But this Dragon Ogre Shagath in here is getting a pretty good charge. We'll see if it actually gets in there before it gets gunned down. It's always pretty epic when you have something at like 1 HP charging in, because it always ends with this like dramatic fall. But the Dragon Ogre Shagath getting in there, and if he can actually shut down these Silver Bullets, it's going to take a lot of pressure off that Chaos center line. You can also see some Forsaken coming in there. And man, he's going to get that big whomping blow and just take out an entire line of those guys. So very, very good stuff from that Dragon Ogre Shagath, down to about 234 HP. You can see these Forsaken charging in as well. So that's a very, very good trade for the Chaos player, able to clean up a very, very high value unit here that, you know, in a very close battle, the Silver Bullets are just a substantially powerful unit. So Forsaken get in there, and they should be able to rout those guys off the battlefield. So over here, Prince Sigvald still doing a very good job at full health. You can see Balthazar Gelt's kind of scurrying around trying to help out his bros. No kills on himself. He's been very, very conservative with his Gelt. And he definitely has to be wary, because if Prince Sigvald's able to get his paws on him, that could be a pretty bad situation. But still, the Chaos Warriors here, down to 32 models and about 1,500 HP. And the Tattersouls have racked up 101 kills, which is pretty impressive, considering the Chaos player's entire front line was Chaos Warriors, which are a unit that has 100 armor. So definitely some good lore metal play, definitely making the best use out of it there. So over here you can see the Knights of the Blazing Sun are kind of coming up to clean up some of these Chaos Warriors and are backing up the Sigmar Suns over the top of this ruined chariot. And Knights of the Blazing Sun are a pretty cool unit. I really like them to use them with the Lore of Fire to get that what is that called, the synergy with the Kindle Flame, which gives a 12% damage buff to flame attacks. So definitely like the choice of the Knights of the Blazing Sun. Kind of fun to mix up those units. Granted, I don't think Chaos has anything that's particularly weak to fire here. So the Knights of the Blazing Sun just kind of on cleanup duty right now. And anytime you're in like a late game kind of close fight, if you have like some cav that are pretty injured, it's always a good idea to kind of like charge around and just clean up the scraps. That'll kind of lead your opponent to army losses quite a bit quicker. So very, very well played. Man, these guys look so cool. I love their shields. That like the art on there is just so awesome. So you can see some of these Chaos Warriors are fleeing right here. It's looking pretty grim for the Chaos player. The bounce of power about 70% for the Empire player. Although the Mighty Prince Sigvald is hunting the Gelt down, so Balthazar Gelt is definitely not happy about this. Sigvald is a pretty good duelist, especially against lightly armored lords, and if I'm not mistaken, the Gelt is just extremely squishy. So he actually has, what is it? Where's his armor right there? He has about 20 armor, so yeah, you know, a good 3 or 4 more attacks from Prince Sigvald, if they do make contact, would be pretty good for actually killing the Gelt here. So, and Gelt actually has 38 melee defense, which is surprisingly high considering like he's kind of a caster lord. But Sigvald is surrounded. He's going to put up a pretty good last stand, because he does have, if I'm not mistaken, quite a bit of regeneration left. But the Warriors of Chaos, aside from the Prince Sigvald, are pretty much out of steam. So we'll probably go ahead and fast forward here. Yeah, you can see there's just a few kind of troops scattered around here. He does actually cast the Plague of Rust on Sigvald, which brings him down to 40 armor. But still, with that healing, there's not a ton of like heavy AP units in here in general. So, I mean, granted, even with the Armored Lord, he still does, what is Sigvald's base armor? I think it's like 100. So, yeah, I suppose it's still pretty good even when debuffed there. But Knights of the Blazing Sun coming in, Prince Sigvald just fighting like an absolute champ. The Empire player is pretty tattered, but I would say one of the, you know, the big conditions there for why the Chaos player lost was because of the chariots. Those were just a really, really rough pick. It could have been fun. Like, based on that situation when he saw that the Empire player had a pretty commanding position to the flanks with the cav, he should have just thrown the chariots behind the Chaos Warriors and just slammed them into the fray and just used them in the front line. Granted, you know, they still wouldn't have done great, but it would have been much better than what he had tried to do, kind of pushing around and just trying to harass initially. Still, though, very, very well played. It was a really fun game, getting to see the Gabo King and the mighty Balthazar Gelt getting in there and having some fun. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that one. Let me know if you guys want to see me try out the Gelt myself, and I definitely will. I think I'm a little bit inspired by the Gabo King here. But again, guys, thank you for watching. More content coming soon, and have an excellent night.